to Africa Speaks of today. My name is Stephen Mulindwa, and I do hope that you had, as usual, a wonderful weekend until we met, as we last met the previous time. Now, I've got somebody in the studio here today. He's a very interesting person, and he's running for one of the biggest offices in London here, and we do pray heavily that he wins this office. Before we go any further, I think we need to have a short break before I introduce the guest, and then we go ahead with a very, very, very interesting program. I promise you it's going to be a very
Over the last 30 years, we've worked together with faith organizations, community organizations, government agencies to ensure that we have peace on our streets. And I want to see that we do everything we can and we step up for London to ensure we have a safe city. In order to do that, I am standing as an independent mayoral candidate. Be part of something different. Let's not hand the future to just politicians. Let's hand the future to the people of London. Hi everybody, my name is Nims, and I love London. This is an amazing city. It's a city we can all be proud to call our home. And I believe it's a city we must work together to preserve and protect. Over the last 30 years, we've worked together with faith organizations, community organizations, government agencies to ensure that we have peace on our streets. And I want to see that we do everything we can and we step up for London to ensure we have a safe city. In order to do that, I am standing as an independent mayoral candidate. Be part of something different. Let's not hand the future to just politicians. Let's hand the future to the people of London.
Yes, welcome back. Nims Obunge joins us today to explain why Londoners should vote for him to be the first black mayor of London. Mark this, the first black mayor of London. Now, Pastor Nims Obunge and Chief Executive of the Knife Crime Awareness Organization, Peace Alliance, is a man of principles and his word, who has worked tirelessly to make London a safer place to live in. He has met who is who in British political circle. That includes prime ministers, members of parliament, and top police officers at the front line of fighting crime here in London. As he's based in Tottenham, North London, people call him father due to thousands and thousands of homeless and those at the lower scale of our society his organization has fed each week. Pastor Nims Obunge, welcome to the Africa Speaks of today. And I'm very honored that you're here.
Well, Steve, it's a privilege to be here with you. Thank you very much for having me in your studio, which I must say is beautiful.
Thank you very much.
And I salute the excellence that you have here.
Okay, thank you very much. The first and foremost, I want us to start with the why Mayor of London? Why should people vote for you? What is, why? Have you got the capability? Have you got the, why? You could explain to our listeners, our viewers, the sort of vigor that you have that you can do this job.
Well, I suppose I've always been a mayor in waiting.
Yeah.
And this is just the natural progression. Over the last 30 years, I started a charity, like you alluded to. Whilst we addressed knife crime, there were many other things we did. It was actually a crime reduction, community cohesion charity. And what happened with the Peace Alliance was that it was communities getting together to say we've got to work together to have peace in our community and in our city. And so what the Peace Alliance represents, it represents a partnership of government, statutory, faith, community, organizations, all working together to ensure that we have a sense of cohesion and peace in London. But then we went beyond London and we've transcended activities to other parts of the United Kingdom. So when it says, why should Londoners vote for me? Well, that's because I'm the only mayor
Yeah.
or the only candidate that has worked in every single borough in London over the last 25 to 30 years. I'm the only person that has worked with young people and their parents and had to bury the young people who have been shot and stabbed in our communities, whilst at the same time chairing the London Criminal Justice Board Advisory Group and also leading I'm being the governor of the College of Haringey Enfield, North East London, and the Haringey Sixth Form, and at the same time being actively involved and chairing the Black Leadership Empowerment Network for the Olympics, and then hosting in any given week 400 to 500 activities during the London Peace Weeks, and facilitating the London Leadership and Peace Awards, which we celebrate Londoners making a difference in our city, and aggregating what they bring to London, and in some cases funding them to do more work in London. So, and I can go on. And I sat on the Stop and Search Scrutiny Panel for London and oversee the issues around Stop and Search. So now what we bring is we come with an agenda to Londoners saying we're passionate about young people. We're passionate about ensuring that we put them at the forefront of the agenda, keeping them safe and protected, so we don't see, like we've seen in London, 14-year-olds being stabbed to death, or a young man who's killed 4 years after his own brother is killed, or I'm having to deal with a situation where four members of one family have been killed in London. This should not be a blood city. This should not be a murder city. This should be a city where our children should be able to grow and children can bury their parents. I want to see affordable homes, and I can go on. You asked a question that can take about 2 hours to answer.
I do
so
understand.
do you want me to stop?
I was going to interrupt you in a few minutes. The point I've seen with all the campaigns, with all the others who are campaigning for the mayorship, you are the only candidate who is actually focusing most of your attention on the youth, on the crime, and and youth and crime is the major issue that your focus is on. While the others are looking at housing, they are looking at other things as well. And youth has not been, I'm trying to think, won't that affect the chances of you winning? Because if the elderly here, that you haven't mentioned them somewhere, or the teachers and doctors and nurses and so on, because I've seen your attention is basically based on that. And
I don't think you're looking well.
You've actually worked so much in that area. You're practically, you could get a degree.
But Steve, you're not looking well. You're not looking well. You're assuming a picture that's not right. Because if you've gone on our website and if you look at our flyers, it clearly says the first thing we're looking at is having a safe and a secure city. The second thing is affordable homes. Because and then the third thing we talk about is prosperity, about businesses. And then the fourth thing we talk about is a green and a healthy London. So in reality, what I first addressed was the immediacy of the death that we're seeing in London, which must be looked at. But then we must look at the issues that have caused the violence and the crime on our street, which is socioeconomic deprivation. And so what we're looking at is how can we have affordable homes across London? And how do I ensure that as we have affordable homes across London, we also ensure that by increasing the supply, the demand goes down. People are not being priced out of London, and that we use modern methods of construction to build homes. That's within our manifesto. And I speak a lot about that. And I speak about how to make sure that our homes that are built are eco-friendly. And then I also speak about our COVID recovery fund to ensure that businesses are able to get back into business. So I'm not sure when you say that, I'm not sure you've been digging deeper now.
No. The reason why I'm saying that is because it's been top of your agenda. I watched a Zoom that you did a week or so ago, and it took more than 20 minutes of the time that you had. You are mentioning, and even now, it's one of the things that you introduced, you first started with. So it's a main focus, and I can understand that because you've worked with the youth, you've worked with the police, and so on and so forth. So I can understand that. And that's why I'm saying that all the other people who are watching, or all the other people who have seen your manifesto and so on, you have those things in the pipeline.
Absolutely. But
they are not at the forefront.
Well,
that's the only reason why I'm saying that.
Well, let me interrupt you and say this, because death is very finite.
It is.
So when if we prioritize housing over lives, then we've made a big mistake. So in reality, we've got to look at lives as pivotal in our city, because here's what is happening. In some communities where there's violent crime and people are being killed, what happens is the house prices go down.
Yeah.
And so, and I've had people who live in very expensive suburbs who have told me that because the crime is going up, they're moving out of that community, including St. John's Wood. And they've said that they don't, some areas in St. John's Wood, they don't feel safe in. Some have said to me, look, Nims, we need you to become mayor so that it doesn't, it's cascading into Mayfair. People aren't feeling safe in Mayfair. So what I want to do is reassure Londoners that we will deal with the crime. And I want to correct that notion that many politicians are speaking about more police officers. They're actually saying they will bring more police. And those are, first thing, you look at Sean Bailey or Sadiq Khan, they are speaking about policing, and that's the first thing they mention. Now, so when you aggregate it to say it's just the only thing I've done, or the only thing I'm focusing on, I want to correct that notion immediately and say, and this is a healthy conversation, I want to correct that notion and make clear that what my focus is I need to make young people know they're not the future. They are very important to the present right now. But then at the same time, I want to make sure that their families and the homes they live in, that they're not having 4 children living in one home, in one bedroom, and having mental health trauma, which is, I was speaking to the principal of the College of Harringay Enfield in North East London today, and they were talking to me about some of the trauma some of the students that young people go through in their homes. So we've got to try to make sure those families know that we're interested in their children. We've got to make sure that they know that we're interested in their housing. We've got to make sure that mother who's having to work 3 to 4 jobs and not having enough time to invest in her children, she's got to know that we're having a plan to give her better job opportunities, entrepreneurial opportunities that gets her from having to suffer that pathway and not invest into her children.
Right. I want us to come to another point, which is very, very crucial as far as London is concerned and as far as United Kingdom is concerned.
Absolutely.
And that's the issue of the money. Money has always been at the center of everything in our lives. And
that's subjective, but I can accept that.
London has a budget of 19 billion pounds. The mayor has
it's
a budget
17,
of that.
it's about 17.
Yeah, something like that. And it's even going up. It's going up. Now, a lot has happened over the years, and Brexit, I mean, they have been trying to find taxes ever since Ken Livingstone was mayor. The money is not enough. We're trying to. Everybody's saying the same thing. We need affordable home. We need to do this. Councils are cutting down on areas where youth used to go and play. Maybe this is why knife crime is going up. But they're all saying, look, we don't have the money to maintain that. Now, if you're within the budget, this budget comes up. And all these things, as you are saying them, affordable home, affordable this, and so on and so forth. How are you going to make sure, now that London is facing a huge, huge task with coronavirus has come, a tax that has been, is going to be, there's a tax cut because of people are no longer employed. Yeah, I mean, how are you going to manage to make sure that, okay, I can please the housing people, I can please the police and give them more police? Because if you put more police down, they will need to be paid, and the budget is not enough. How are you going to make sure that if you're given a certain budget, you balance the books with that rather than increase the taxes?
It's something called equitable division of resources, and making sure that you're not just putting resources in one particular area. So you just assumed that I'm going to get much more police on the streets, like many other politicians have said. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be very smart about the way we distribute our police resource. I think there are issues around special constables that should come from our communities, and they're not necessarily paid. I gave an experience of when I was coming from Hendon College. And when I came out of Hendon College, what I had was a man who was a fund manager in the city, working with a fintech company, because I'm a director of a fintech company. And I understand.
You're everywhere.
But it so happens I've learned how to distribute my capacity and my strength. And he was a fund manager. But what he was doing that was his give back.
Yeah.
He wasn't getting paid by the state because he has a job.
Okay.
And now what we need is more men like yourself and like him who would say, I want to invest back into my community and I can be special constable. So what happens is I'm not having to fork out a lot of money to give you because you're already being paid for your job.
Okay.
And so if we have a critical distribution of resources, we're not having to put too much in any particular area. Let's talk about youth centers that got shut down. The most unused premises within London would be our schools and even faith organizations. Faith organizations open on Sunday and sometimes in the evenings, or if you're a church or in a mosque and all that. So what I would like to see is the effective use of schools, faith organizations as centers for, back to my youth, the innovation centers, and those are innovation training centers. So what would happen is that we're not throwing too much money into certain places that already exist. We just upgrade the use of those facilities in order to make sure that we're not shutting down, because you don't shut down schools. So because you're not shutting down schools, therefore the youth clubs will not be shut down. You have innovation centers that are empowered to look after young people. Then we come back to the budgets. So what happens? The budget are planned by a team of people, and so I will have an integrated delivery task force of the best and the brightest, coming from not just one stream of partisan politics. And that's why it's so important we say to Londoners, as an independent, I'm your best candidate, because I'll work with Labour, Conservative, Lib Dems and the Greens, and I'll bring the best of their thoughts and the best of their people to sit alongside with me in City Hall. And we will bring it, we have some economists who are working with us, and we're going to basically sit down and we'll crunch the numbers, making sure that with TFL, we're looking at inward investment, trying to ensure that we don't continue to hike the prices up, but we continue to look after Londoners as best as we can. And the only way to do that is to ensure that we allow Londoners recognize that they put us there to look after them and give them the best deal. I will make sure Londoners see that they get the best deal.
Now, there are two things here which are going to prove to be very crucial to London in the next 2 to 3 years from today. The first of which is the pandemic. The pandemic. Somebody has to have to come up with a formula of how to bring the tourists back. That's one thing, because there's a lot of money that has been coming in from the tourists that come to visit this city. Secondly, the pandemic itself, the coronavirus, in a sense that lots and lots of jobs have gone because of there isn't really much there to be done. And with the coming in of Zoom, people are working from home. So the city and other areas are now faced with an issue saying, look, time has come, and if people don't come in, they don't see things, they don't buy them, or people are buying things online. Now, shops are closing down because the clothing companies, you're hearing this next, all these big powerhouses that have been selling quite a lot in halls, in major shopping centers, most of them are closing down with a loss of 300,000 jobs and so on. Now, as a London mayor, you're looking at that. How am I going to bring the people back to these shops so that we could get the taxes out of them? How am I going to make sure that the tourists are coming back? These are issues that Londoners are looking at. How are you going to do that?
Okay.
Yeah.
So here's the beautiful thing about this. I've been in London for, well over 30 years.
Okay.
And I've traveled around the world. London is still the greatest city in the world. It is still the most amazing city, and it has the greatest tourist attractions and opportunities that we have. And the world will still want tourism. And guess what? When it comes to coronavirus, we have seemed to do quite well in bringing the pandemic down and making sure that this city is safe and healthy. So I want you to know that, contrary to the notion that people don't want to go back to work, much as many people have worked from home because of mental trauma and people feeling really tired of just staying in their sitting room, people want to mix with other people. And London is opening up for business again. What we're doing is we're opening up the center of London, and I'm seeing that happen. So London is still opening up right now. And I was speaking to journalists from a significant paper, and they were telling me that the numbers are going exponentially high. Now, at the moment, the Metro, as a typical example, has an excess of 680,000 give outs in the mornings.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it's everything that we hear is not always true. And there's a notion about fake news here.
Yeah.
And so you need to know that Londoners are getting back out there.
Yeah.
I was out there with my team in Piccadilly Circus and in Oxford Street, and the street was buzzing with a lot of activity. Londoners are back, and I was meeting tourists on the streets when we were giving out our leaflets. Londoners are coming back out, and tourism will open back up, and London will still thrive again. We have a resilient spirit. We're a very culturally mixed society, but I believe that London is going to come back to business again. And as mayor of London, I will make the world know that we're ready for business. We're ready for them to come back in. It is the nature of our city to be a welcoming city, and I can't wait to welcome London, other folks outside of London back in. We did it when I was chair of the Black Leadership Empowerment Network for the Olympics. I saw London at its best, and with some of the activities we will plan, cultural events, sporting events, great events we will plan for London, it's inevitable. We'll bring the world back in.
Okay, now the question of management has come in, and I've been reading about this in the newspaper. You are an independent candidate.
Absolutely.
And without affiliation to any political party.
Absolutely.
Which usually have big budgets to spend for the mayor, for the incoming mayor, and so on, to campaign and so on. So that is where a bit of a difficult. Your pocket is something that, okay, you can manage to campaign as an independent person, but the kind of money that you use for the campaign is not the same, say, for example, as Sadiq Khan, who has the party behind him, or like the other chap from the Conservative Party. That's one thing. How are you managing with that? And then there is something that voters usually worry, that if they have a candidate who is independent and sitting at City Hall and not affiliated to any party that can actually jump in if it's going wrong somewhere. If a Labour candidate like Ken Livingstone was doing at the time, and they could easily jump in and say, hey, don't do that. It's against our principles. There is that major worry. Doesn't that worry you that if you don't have any of these big guys behind you, there might be problems in future if you're the mayor of London?
I'm not sure whether you realize, Steve, that you gave you gave the answer to your question in your question.
No, really?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
Because you mentioned Ken Livingstone, and Ken Livingstone was the first mayor of London, and he became a mayor of London as an independent.
Yeah, but he had the trade unions. That's one thing.
Can
I
had
say
the trade
something?
Unions. I'm just and that is subjective. You mean the trade unions voted for him?
No.
Can I say that he was not?
He was in the party and then he left the party. Remember, when we voted for him, he was in the party.
No.
Yeah.
Can I be clear?
Okay.
That when Ken Livingstone became mayor of London, a Labour candidate stood against Ken and lost. And
that's
so
the second time around.
No.
Yeah.
That's the first time. I did the hustings.
Yeah, okay.
So in reality, I have pictures and images, and some of the images you might have seen on that video was of Ken Livingstone, Boris Johnson, and so I just want to. I need to put the record straight.
I'll probably explain that anyway. I'll explain where I was heading.
I know where you're
yeah.
going with that, and I just want to clarify so that you're clear. I mean, this is a great conversation, but I just don't want you to shoot yourself in the foot. Here's the reality. Okay. On the one hand, when you run for mayor, whether you're running as a party candidate or an independent, once you get into that office, you are put in by the people of London, not by a party. And so you're accountable to the people of London. And that like I said to the public service students in the college today when I was speaking to them, that whilst they were concerned and complaining about what Peter Patel was doing about protest and legislation around that. I said, whether it's the Prime Minister or the Home Secretary, anybody in public office is put for a limited time. In this particular case with the mayor, it's only 3 years because Sadiq has taken 5 years because of coronavirus. And you're put there by the authority and the mandate of the people. And you will remain accountable to the people who put you there. So Ken, irrespective of whether he went in there initially as an independent and in his second term as a Labour candidate, and Boris who went in as a Conservative, and Sadiq who's gone in there as Labour. And in spite of the fact that there's been division between, at points in time, between Sadiq's policies around Labour, and when he had the issues with Jeremy Corbyn, there was a division. But then the reality, and that was a party divided against itself. Yet at the same time, what happened was Sadiq recognized that the people that put him there were Londoners, and dare I say, only 1.3 million of Londoners who put him there in a city of 9 million people, which means that the majority of Londoners had political apathy. 4 to 5 million people did not vote for him, and so in reality, what he is he's the mayor by a minority over the majority. And so what I want to be is I want to be the people's mayor, where the people can put me in there and know that I am accountable to them, and I will make sure I remain accountable to them, not to a small group of cronies that can control me, but rather the people of London who say you remain accountable to us, and I'll make sure I remain that way.
Ronnie, before we go ahead, I just want to put one thing correct. Ken Livingstone was a wasn't a Labour candidate, but was in Labour. So when they didn't want him on, we protested that they wouldn't tell us who we want to vote for. And that is why we voted for Ken Livingstone to come in, because he stood as an independent candidate after being rejected by Labour. You get
well, the reality.
That's what I'm saying.
No,
that's what I was trying to put out.
Irrespective, I know the history.
Yeah, of course.
I know the history. I did a hustings for the mayoralty. But I want you to know on record, Ken Livingstone was the first independent, irrespective of the dynamics of what happened within the Labour Party. And whatever the dynamics you've just explained, that is not relevant to the history books. What's relevant to the history books is he was the first independent mayoral candidate that won the office. And as I've said, I will be the next.
Okay, that's great. We leave that alone. You're a pastor, and being a pastor, there is something that I've noticed over here, which is, say, for example, there is a moral obligation that you have to do the right thing, and this has affected some of the, I should say, the political correctness we have in our society. Say, for example, I'll give an example of an issue between Ken Livingstone and Lee Jasper. Lee Jasper was his right-hand man. A lot of things happened in the media, and there was a lot of pressure. He didn't want to let Lee Jasper go. Eventually, he had to let him go because of the issues in the media. There was that political pressure. Now, if you're you are the mayor of London, suddenly you come up with a moral issue, and you get political correctness stepping in a way. How are you going to deal with that?
Well, first of all, let me say that I was with Ken and Lee Jasper, and I did the press conference. The one press conference that Ken and Lee Jasper did on this issue, and I spoke on behalf of Ken, on behalf of Lee Jasper, and I took a stand because I believe that we're a very unforgiving society and nation. You said I'm a pastor, so I'm not shy to say that when a woman was caught in the very act of adultery, and those men wanted to stone her, Jesus made a simple statement. Said, "Let him without sin cast the first stone." Be the first one to do that. And everybody's stone dropped down. Now the reality is, but for the grace of God, there go we, any one of us, and we know what issues each one of us may struggle with in our own personal lives. And the fact is, what I believe in the world of politics is that whilst we live in a very unforgiving society, we must give people a second chance. And that's what I do. I give ex-offenders second chances. I've employed many people who have come out of prison, who work with me, even though society may want to tarnish them. One of them was Winston Silka, who some may not know. I know and I worked with him, and he worked with me for about 7 years, and he began to employ other ex-offenders. I stand with the underdog, and I believe that no matter what, no matter how society tries to cast you out, one of the things you use the word pastor, which means shepherd, is that you don't leave you're able to leave the 99 in company and look for the one that's missing and pull them back up. I don't want to leave anybody in London behind. And no matter who you are, whether, whatever the struggles may be, I will stand with you, empower you to believe in your ability to regain who you are. And so one of our policies is about having community coaches in London. The reason we want to have community coaches, just like a coach brings out your best potential, I really believe that what we need, we'll have business coaches and those who will empower those who are struggling in different areas to get back to their own game plan. And so if it happens on my watch,
Yeah.
I will stand with any of my team and empower them to get back on their game. I'm not there to tear people and throw them under the bus.
Even when you have political pressure, that such a, because he faced that. If you have political pressure, and the pressure comes from the politicians.
Exactly. I'm not a politician,
Yeah.
and so I'm kind of free from that. You just said it. You just told me I'm not caught up by the cronies. And so in reality, what I am, I'm accountable to the people. And so I asked many years ago. I asked a question of a senior politician from a party, which I will not necessarily make mention of, but you would know the person. And I said, why does the tail wag the dog? He said, what do I mean by that? And I said, why is it that the media seem to control the politicians? And they assume that's public pressure. It's not because the public are putting pressure, it's just because the media put in pressure. And all of a sudden, he made me understand this. He said sometimes before you go into politics, you get caught up having to do some deals with the media so that they give you a good press and a good outing. And if they don't give you a good outing, it influences. So when you say political pressure or people pressure, sometimes that pressure does not come from the people. It comes from those who control media, or it comes from those who feel that they put you in place. I want the people to put me in place, so I remain accountable only to the people.
Well, I'll leave that.
You have a different view of that, and by the way, I'm strongly of this position.
No, it's because you see, if you're caught up in a situation where your entire team, for example, it becomes sometimes a moral dilemma. The man is your friend. The man is, you've worked with him. The man has got very good ideas. The man is everything that you can think, and he has a lot to serve and to serve and protect and whatever service is, and he has given all he has. But then he makes one mistake somewhere, and he said, "Oh, he has to go." And then those around you say, "Come on, he's bringing us down with us." Then you have to make. I will
make those decisions, obviously, in support of whoever the individual is, and you'll have to look at things on a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
Everything what you don't do is you don't have a carte blanche approach to everything.
Yeah, right.
You have a case-by-case review of things and see whether there is a place for redemptive, some levels of redemption in situations like that. But I'm not disputing the fact that if people do need to move on as a result of situations in their life and they want to invest more in time with their family in order to regain that, we'll empower them to do so. But I'm really not in the place. I do not believe that politics should be as damning as it has been to many, and neither do I believe public service should be as damning as it's been. We need to know the power of love and forgiveness. And maybe that's a dynamic I intend to bring into politics.
Okay. Yeah, it could be a nice one where if politicians could follow that. That would be really nice in terms of good governance.
Absolutely.
I think that would be a very good one. Now, in an article that you wrote on the Saturday, the 14th of April, 2007, which was titled, it was in the Guardian newspaper, by the way, and the head title was, "Tony Blair blames black people over knife crime, but is not giving us the help we need to deal with it." This was in the Guardian of the 14th of April. And you wrote this: "The failure of the government to fund research into trades and their causes has led to knee-jerk laws, heavy-handed policing, and over-representation of black youngsters and men in the prison system. This all contributes to the spiraling of youth crime in certain areas. We are denying the need to address these issues ourselves. Leaders in the black community have been saying for years that social exclusion, racism, poverty, education, and achievement and deprivation have created problems that need to be tackled cohesively and systematically in a systematical fashion." What is the black community expecting from the government? To be given more money to deal with this issue, which Tony Blair at the time was saying money had been poured in, but nothing.
That was not what Tony Blair was saying.
There was no improvement.
That was not what Tony Blair was saying. I can tell you that because I was part of that. It was a round table. It was a conversation that happened in number 10 Downing Street.
But the expectation, the key thing here was the expectation. What was the expectation at the time? Because nothing was going. They were saying they were achieving. They were saying they had given this, But
no,
nothing
that was not
being-
what's happening. That was
Okay,
not happening.
okay.
I want
What
to
is happening?
correct the dynamic on
Okay,
that
okay,
conversation.
okay.
So that was a conversation I had with Tony Blair
Okay.
on the round table around violence. And,
By the way, Tony Blair was the former British Prime Minister.
yes, way back in 2000.
Yeah, way back in 2007, yeah.
Yeah, what we were doing was we were discussing
Yeah.
the challenges that were impacting young black men and why there was violence in our streets. And isn't it sad, Steve, before I go any further,
Yeah.
that statement could have been written today?
Of course, yeah, it could.
Isn't
It
that
could,
sad
yeah.
that statement that you just read out?
Yeah, that's why I picked it out. Because I
Still
thought,
sounds exactly like a society right now within the black community.
yeah.
And so I was addressing, and that's one of the reasons I'm running for mayor, because politicians have failed to address this issue that we have consistently said, and we've continued to talk about. We're not just talking about knife crime and gun crime. We're talking about all the issues behind that.
Doesn't it need a team? What the Americans have done with the George Floyd issue is a team. They're put together now, teams in places whereby the changing of the law in training police officers in a different format. Chicago, New York State, and several other American states are introducing certain training in a different way. And they are even changing to make sure that the policemen go where the black policeman is. There should be a white policeman. Because if you leave them on their own in a way,
but that's not the problem.
Yeah.
You're addressing the wrong end. You're coming to the enforcement side of things, and I'm talking about the intervention part, the prevention part of things.
Okay. The key thing is there a team in place, for example? Because if they call now and say you are mayor of London now,
Absolutely.
have you got a team of say this is what is going to happen?
So can I be clear about
Yeah,
this?
yeah.
You've asked me a question. If you'll allow me answer,
Okay, go ahead.
then
I'm sorry for interrupting you.
maybe you'll get clarity on the
Yeah.
position.
Okay.
First of all, just for the benefit of the conversation, in relation to Tony Blair,
Yeah.
that was when Tony Blair came up with the notion of tough on crime and tough on the causes of crime.
Yeah.
They called me up at number 10 Downing Street before he made that statement in Cardiff, and he eventually did apologize for the way he tried to say that it was me that caused him to come up with that statement. But in reality, what I was saying to him was there needs to be a lot of inward investment into communities where we find levels of violence to empower those communities to get out of those issues, because there's a lot of socioeconomic disadvantage, school exclusions, parenting challenges.
Yeah.
You look at the fiber of what's going on in the lives of those children and the dysfunctional issues and the ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences many of these children are having. And if you don't support that trauma, what you do is you end up just being heavy-handed with policing on the streets. That's not the solution, because you can't arrest your way out of a problem like this. What you've got to do is you have to work on the strategy to come out of it. And now, when you talk about a team, I'd like you to understand that the kinds of people that we have on our back-end side, we have a former commander, the most senior former Asian officer in the Met Police, Commander Mac Chisty. We have the former head of the Youth Justice Board for all of London, in fact, all of the country, Ellie Roy. We have her on team, and I can name several other people who are very significant, from those in the criminal justice system, parenting structures, and the whole educational side of things. And knowing, again, I'm part of the educational pathway, because I've been in education for the last 15 years, chairing the College of Haringey Enfield, being on the governorship board of the College of Haringey Enfield, North East London, and a trustee of the Sixth Form College. So I understand the issues around education, having participated in that pathway. But I understand business, and I'm working with some significant business folks from the city who will be part of this pathway. So what we are going to look at is a holistic plan, but we're not going to just stop with our team. We're going to open ourselves up, and that's the unique thing about what we bring. We don't come as a closed unit. We come as an open unit to say, even if you may not have supported my candidacy to be mayor of London, what I will do is London is bigger and better than us just being restricted to just a tribe, because we can do better together. And that's why I love what you see over there. We can do better. And the only way we do better is we do it together. And you talk about a team. Together, everyone achieves more. So that's what this is about. What we want to do in London is aggregate that level of support for all those that are in challenging situations in our city, and give them that sense of knowing that we're looking for the professionals and we're looking for the best, the practitioners, not just the politicians.
Now, having not been, you've served obviously in public office at various areas.
Absolutely.
But not in major public office.
What does that mean?
Being a member of parliament is a major public office, I guess.
Okay.
Being a secretary of
Jackie Smith was a teacher, and so I'm just trying to and became home secretary. So I find it amusing that you have notions that are quite flawed.
No. What I'm saying, look, listen. The reason why I'm giving all this is that. Having walked around, and I've given a number of your cards, by a number of your leaflets to people, and everybody is asking me. And when they asked me, I said, he's a well-known person. He has the personality. He's a pastor. He said, yeah, but who is he? Or where is he? I try and explain. I said, look at the man's credibility. Look at, and the fact that the man is a pastor. That in itself is trustworthy. And then he said, yeah, but when we look at the candidates, I said, look, public office, everybody thinks in terms of if he's served in a public office, which we know about, then maybe he stands a bigger chance. But I'm
okay. Can I say? I think that the more you know, maybe the stronger you are equipped to have those conversations. And I'll happily after this conversation send you my bio if you haven't seen it. But then you would see from my bio that I also sat on the Haringey Strategic Partnership Board for a period of 5 years, and we oversaw the budget for the borough of Haringey, making sure that we had a participatory budget that included, we brought everybody's budget in from the health sector and other sectors, and say, how can we make sure this budget impacts and influences every aspect of our borough? So when you're looking over and you're sitting on the decision-making panels on budgeting for a borough, I think that's also significant. When you chair the London Criminal Justice Board Advisory Board, and you sit on the Criminal Justice Board for all of London, I think that is quite significant. I think that when you sit on the Stephen Lawrence policing, the Sir John Stevens Policing Reform Board for all of police in the country, I think that's quite significant. I think as I chair the Race and Equality Commission for the country with Baroness Stroud, I think that is quite significant. I can continue. If
I think our viewers have got the feed of that. That's what I wanted to bring out in you, because at the end of the day, I mean, it's too long to even be listed down to a page. So it's more than a page if one has to list it down.
It is, and so I think it's important that the viewers also know that I have taken a leave of absence as a deputy lieutenant, and I was the first ever black deputy lieutenant appointed to Her Majesty, and for the Lord Lieutenant for Her Majesty, and I've taken a leave of absence in order to pursue this role, and I will remain a deputy lieutenant to Her Majesty after this. But the reason I've taking that leave is because I believe Londoners are important and deserve the best. And that's why I want to run for this and make sure we do something to give Londoners a good experience of what London needs and deserves. After that, I'll go back to that.
All right, there's something about that I picked out from what you said last time when you were doing the Zoom meeting, I think a week or so ago. You mentioned you're a family-oriented person, and you mentioned the family as being the foundation of each and everything that we are standing on. Without a foundation, it is that, and then you also did mention that somewhere along the way, if you're Mayor of London, you're going to look into issues that are connected with the families, on how young boys and young girls can come and so on. This is one area that Tony Blair, John Major, former Prime Ministers, and I think there was very little that Johnson has mentioned a family because maybe, I don't know, but he hasn't been so much connection. But the other prime ministers have all come up and have also said, okay, now children have to grow up within the family structure. And you did mention that. But the problem is the current way in which our society is. The structure falls us apart. And you are saying you're going to put that structure back in some ways. How are you going to do that? Because that involves money as well. Everything comes around.
I think your notion of money is different from mine. And it's great to have the conversation.
Yeah, because most of these things need money.
I believe more in the value before we think of money. And I think that if we get the value system right, then vision begets provision. And so if the vision's right, the provision's inevitable.
Okay.
And so here's my structure. I believe that when a child is born, he's born into a parenting pathway. And so I believe in parenting that is proper. So we've got to make sure our children are given the right support structures and is having those conversations and empowering folks to understand parenting that is structured. What makes peace possible in any of our communities? What makes our communities flourish? Effective parenting. The next tier for me is about education that's effective. So that next thing, a child comes out of his home into an educational pathway. And I believe in this holistic sense of education for young people. But then there's also this whole thing about, within education, you come back home, and some of our viewers recognize and remember that they come home with a picture and they say to their mom and dad, "Mom, look at this, and isn't this an amazing picture?" Some children don't have that support structure. So if you don't have that, you have two kinds of children coming into school. One that's been affirmed at home and the other that's not been affirmed at home. So I believe the achievements that are celebrated and affirmation of children is so important into building a whole being.
Of course,
and that doesn't take money for a mom to say, "Well done." It doesn't take money for a parent to be taught how to just say, "You're doing great, kid."
But
I'm coming there. I ain't done yet. I'm coming. And then within even the poorest of families, that we all believe in this fifth thing or the fourth thing, which is communities that are mobilized, because we've said back in Africa, and this is an African context, conversation, it takes a village to raise a child. And in that village, in the villages we're raised, you don't all have to have money. You just need to have the value system of and going back to your core value systems about how we're the village that raises our children. So nobody paid me to have a passion for those children on our streets. I'm not paid to do the stuff I do. Neither do I find the need to pay some of the people that work with me who clearly are passionate about what needs to happen in our young people's lives. So there's the fifth thing. And the fifth thing, is about enterprise and employment. Now you're talking about money that's sustainable. So what happens is four of those things and immediately money focused. The fifth one about enterprise and employment is PEACE, peace. But parenting that's proper, that just requires a heartbeat for and the facility, helping parents to understand that. Education that's effective, making sure we give some form of holistic education. In the UK, we give free education to our kids. Let's make sure the educational pathways are right. Achievements that are celebrated. Let's learn to affirm the children as they go through the educational pathways. Villages, communities that are mobilized, whether it's in church, or your mosque or your synagogue or your temple or community organization, somehow we get a wraparound support for our children. Then enterprise that is sustainable. We make sure that there's money to give that child a job and an enterprise that makes them give back to society.
Now, what I was looking at most importantly was the presence of the fathers in our homes, or if not, the presence of the fathers in the lives of their children. Because one of the key things which reports have been coming, or is they said, okay, most of the kids who commit crime are from single parenthood and so on and so forth. And then they put that down to the black families. They said, because most of the fathers are not there, because all this, because of poverty, because of that. That is the structure I'm looking at. And I'm looking at it from an angle of where you're a pastor, and you're coming across this most of the time. How do you deal with that?
Well, here's one thing. I first give a shout out to all the women who are amazing mothers, who are raising some amazing children, and not, even in the absence of fathers, are succeeding. And I'm looking at the statistics. Much as there is something about, within the Race Equality Commission, we're looking at some of the statistics about absent fathers, and whether that is also the issue with the black African and the black Caribbean, and how that also is related to how it exists within the white, Caucasian community and other communities. We're looking at the statistics, and I'll say watch this space. But then in relation to what I think needs to happen, it's not always, and it is not yet statistically proven, that because you have the absence of dad, therefore the child's going to miss his pathway. But it's been a statement that's been made quite often. But the more you look at the statistics, it's questioning that position. And what, without a doubt, the plan, I believe, that, you know, is best for a child is that he's supported or she's supported by a parental framework for their child. But in the absence of that effective parental structures, what, you know, whether it's the absent father or the absent mother, what we do need to make sure is where there are gaps in the upbringing of a child, as communities, we try to intervene and provide support structures. Hence, that wraparound it takes a village to raise a child. What I intend to do as mayor is continue to speak up the values of families and the things that we need to do to support those who are vulnerable. You can't force a man to stay in a home or a woman to stay in a home. But what we can do is make sure we provide support structures for the most challenged, so that our kids, even should they experience exclusion from school, we get them into a support innovation system that gets them back into mainstream education. We've got to be there for our children.
Now, what is the biggest challenge so far? Now, we've got 2 days to go. What's the biggest challenge of so far of your campaign? And because I know once this challenge is dealt with, then there is a much bigger challenge once you are in there. But at the moment, in this last remaining 48 hours, what's the biggest challenge you faced so far as this thing is?
I think
as far as the campaign is concerned.
I think that rather than, I call it an opportunity. It might be a challenge, but an opportunity. I think getting mainstream media to recognize
I was going to ask
that because I'm not from a party does not mean that I'm not the best. And giving me the opportunity to have a conversation, I'm still the best London can have at this point in time. I bring the best message. I bring the best opportunity.
But have you approached the mainstream media? Have you approaced them? And they haven't given
I mean, I've been on BBC, I've been on ITV, but I think we can do much more.
Because the Al Jazeera or any other would have given you a platform, for example, to say what you have.
Well, just tell Al Jazeera I'm available tomorrow. But here's the reality: what we're trying to do is get as many Londoners as possible to vote. And as long as many Londoners are watching Al Jazeera, I'll happily be there.
Now the biggest problem that most Londoners are looking for. This is my the final one, because we only have about 5 minutes to go before the end of the program.
It's been great having the conversation.
It's to do with the in the next 3 weeks or so, from what I learned from the Guardian and the Times newspapers, Britain's exit obviously is something that we are all aware of.
Brexit, right?
Most of the banks and other major financial institutions are leaving the city to have their headquarters, others in Ireland, others in Germany, and others in France. And there was going to be quite a substantial loss in terms of income to the city. And that the Mayor of London has got to come up with something. One of the things that were discussed were visa-free of passports for the bankers who come in from overseas and so on, so that they have some kind of leeway in coming in and whatever business they deal. And with these big banks also to have some kind of tax cuts so that they remain here in London, so that London remains the financial capital of the world. How are you going to tackle that? Because
that is a very intense conversation that will need to be held with organizations like London First and other business consortiums, and with central government. A decision cannot be made, propositions can be put forward.
You can have an idea now.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I said propositions can be put forward. I've had conversations with the Financial Times just a week ago. We had William Wallace from the Financial Times speak about the London post-COVID, because we have a post-COVID, post-Brexit world. And what does London look like? Here's one truth, and I think it's a balancing act. We say that many businesses are leaving London, That is true. Many businesses are leaving London. But can I also tell you what is true? Many businesses are not leaving London. and so it's back to the analogy that we were taught when we were children.
Yeah.
Is it half full or half empty?
Yeah.
I think London is half full. And so we still will build on what we've got.
Yeah.
And we're still going to be an amazing city. And we're still going to be a global leader. And I really believe that London has the best offer.
Okay, I just want to say thank you very, very much for coming here and telling us about your campaign. And I do want to wish you all the best of luck.
Thank you.
And personally, I'll vote for you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and we look forward. I hope you remember me when you're Mayor of London.
Well,
suddenly, and say, look, Stephen, you better come around.
Thanks a lot, Omega T. Great to be on Omega Live. It's an amazing studio, amazing work you guys do.
Yeah.
And thank you for having me. Thank you for your vote.
Okay.
And to all Londoners out there who are watching this program, give us your vote on Thursday.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope we'll be together again next week for another edition of Africa Speaks. Thank you for viewing us, and may God bless you.
Hi everybody, my name is Nims, and I love London. This is an amazing city. It's a city we can all be proud to call our home. And I believe it's a city we must work together to preserve and protect. Over the last 30 years, we've worked together with faith organizations, community organizations, government agencies to ensure that we have peace on our streets. And I want to see that we do everything we can and we step up for London to ensure we have a safe city. In order to do that, I am standing as an independent mayoral candidate. Be part of something different. Let's not hand the future to just politicians. Let's hand the future to the people of London.